Robert waited with mounting impatience, every hour seeming to stretch into a day. He kept himself sober, alert, a taut bowstring waiting for the arrow's release. The Red Keep's halls grew quieter, the whispers fewer, as if everyone sensed an approaching calamity. Servants scurried by, heads bowed, too afraid to meet the king's gaze. He found himself pacing in the small hours of the night, alone in the throne room, torchlight dancing over the gilded metal of the Iron Throne, its twisted swords reflecting his grim visage. He thought back to the rebellion, to the hammer blows he had dealt House Targaryen. He remembered the cries of victory, the feeling that once he wore the crown, he could steer the realm into peace and prosperity. Yet now he was trapped in a web of deceit spun under his own roof, forced to take up arms again against those he had raised high. At last, the final piece of proof arrived. Ned Stark presented it to him discreetly in the king's solar. Among the old records of Jon Arryn, there was a sealed letter containing the late hand's final notes. It spelled out clearly what Jon Arryn had discovered. The children did not share their father's dark Baratheon hair, a trait that bred true in every branch of the family, while every so-called royal child had the golden hair of House Lannister. Arryn had dug deep, confirming time after time that whenever a Baratheon wed, the offspring bore their signature looks. The children of Cersei had no trace of Baratheon blood. Combined with Cersei's own furious admission, this was irrefutable. Robert felt sickened and vindicated all at once. He slammed a fist onto the table. There was no more need to wait. He summoned Ned Stark and ordered him to bring forth the men who had gathered secretly, to secure the Red Keep and guard every exit. Robert would have no more games. This would be settled in a single, merciless stroke. Lord Stark bowed once, grim and silent, and strode off to set the plan in motion. The men who had trickled into the city over the past weeks had been waiting for this moment, blades kept oiled and armor ready, but hidden beneath cloaks and merchants' garb. Now they would move to secure the royal family's apartments, the wings of the keep where Lannister loyalists lurked, and most importantly the Queen's chambers. Robert dressed for battle, though he would not leave the castle walls. He donned a black leather jerkin and a mail shirt beneath it, strapped on the great warhammer that had once crushed princes and Kingsguard alike. He felt heavier now, slower, but the old anger still burned. He allowed himself no second thoughts. The realm demanded justice, and he would deliver it. He could hear a clamor in distant halls, men following Stark's orders, quietly and quickly taking key positions. He approached Cersei's chamber last, flanked by two of his most loyal guards. The corridor was lit by a few torches, the glow reflecting off polished plate and drawn steel. At his command, the doors were forced open. Inside, Cersei stood in the center of the room, surrounded by a handful of Lannister men-at-arms who looked startled but ready to die for their mistress. She wore a gold gown that shimmered in the light, her face pale but defiant. Behind her, the children huddled, eyes wide and afraid. Joffrey's face, so like Jaime's, twisted with confusion. Myrcella and Tommen clung to each other, too young to understand fully, but frightened by the sudden intrusion. Robert raised his hammer, the head angled downward. "Your crime is known," he said, voice rumbling like distant thunder. "You and your brother have mocked my throne and my name. The 7 kingdoms shall know your treachery. Yield now, or face the price of your sins." Cersei drew a sharp breath. She was cornered and knew it. There would be no easy escape. Her guards exchanged uneasy glances. Already, the sound of steel on steel echoed faintly from the other corridors as Baratheon men subdued Lannister household knights. Cersei lifted her chin. "You would condemn your own children?" she demanded, voice trembling with a mix of fury and desperation. "You would shed their blood for your pride?" Robert's heart twisted. As monstrous as their parentage was, these were children, innocents in their own way, pawns of their mother's ambition. He could not stomach slaughtering them. He cast a glance at Ned Stark, who had entered behind him and stood in stoic silence. Robert's fury ebbed, replaced by a cold finality. "I will not slay them," he said, voice quiet but firm. "They are no heirs of mine, nor will they ever rule. The realm shall know the truth. They will live out their days under guard, their titles stripped, their inheritance lost. As for you," he took a step closer, his hammer's iron gleaming, "you have brought shame and war to my doorstep. Your life is forfeit." It happened quickly. One Lannister guard lunged forward, steel flashing. Robert's hammer swung upward in a blur, smashing the man aside, crushing armor and bone with a hideous crunch. Another soldier turned to run, only to find Ned Stark's blade at his throat. The others threw down their swords as Baratheon men surged into the room. Through it all, Cersei stood transfixed, horrified. She had miscalculated, thinking herself safe behind webs of lies and pretty words. Robert advanced upon her. He remembered her mocking eyes, her lies and scorn. This was no time for mercy. Cersei cried out, half-sobbed something he did not bother to parse. In a single furious stroke, Robert ended the queen's treachery forever. She fell to the floor, golden hair splayed like spilled silk, blood seeping into the weave of the carpet. The children's cries rang out, high and painful. Robert did not look at them again. He left that to Ned Stark, who ushered them out, faces streaked with tears, into a future where their greatest claim would be a cautionary tale, not a throne. King Robert strode from the chamber, heart still hammering, hand gripping the weapon that had delivered hard justice. Beyond the door, the Red Keep was secured. The Lannisters within were disarmed or captured. The silent gathering of loyal banners had served him well. The secret treachery was laid bare, and the realm would learn that the king had crushed a cancer at the heart of his court. Perhaps there would be reprisals from Tywin Lannister, a war to come. If so, Robert would face it head-on, as he always had, hammer in hand and truth on his side. He had restored his honor, cleansed his household of a foul stain, and proven that even kings of flesh and blood could still mete out the justice the realm deserved. No boar hunt took place that day. Instead, Robert Baratheon stood beneath the fading sun, looking toward the hills beyond King's Landing, remembering better times and simpler battles. He knew the realm would forever mark this day as the moment one secret ended and another storm began. He would be ready. In the wake of Cersei's downfall, the Red Keep buzzed with anxious energy. The violence had quieted, the corridors once more patrolled by loyal men wearing Baratheon colors. Word had spread that the king had discovered a monstrous betrayal and acted decisively. Now, the question before them was how the realm would respond. No one doubted that Tywin Lannister would rage and gather forces. The king was no fool. If war came, he would not fight it alone. Stannis and Renly had both answered Robert's secret summons, arriving with armies under banners of stag and sword. Their forces now camped just beyond the city walls, not in the grand parade that might accompany a tourney or a triumph, but as a grim cordon of steel. It was a show of strength and unity, a reminder that House Baratheon was not just one king in a capital, but a lineage that claimed the Stormlands and a mighty share of the royal fleet. Combined, Stannis's disciplined ranks and Renly's charismatic following would form a bastion against the forces of the West. Inside the castle, the small council convened in hushed seriousness. Robert sat at the head of the table, flanked by Ned Stark and other trusted advisors. The air smelled faintly of wax and old parchment, and the mood was tense yet determined. They had done the unthinkable, exposed a queen and slain her to maintain the legitimacy of the crown. It would not pass unnoticed or unchallenged. If Lannister men mustered to march east, the king must be ready to face them, hammer in hand. Ned Stark, standing at Robert's right, had just given a report. Stannis and Renly's arrival had gone smoothly. No factions within the city dared challenge the arriving forces, not after the swift justice Robert had delivered. The soldiers were disciplined and well-placed, holding strategic positions on the roads approaching King's Landing, their presence reinforcing the king's authority. It was a subtle message to any who might doubt him. House Baratheon stood united, three brothers backed by armies rather than divided loyalties. Yet all knew that the Baratheons alone might not be enough. The Lannisters could field great numbers and wield vast wealth. Alliances would be crucial. The king had already sent ravens to Highgarden, a careful and measured appeal to House Tyrell. The Tyrells, proud and powerful in the Reach, had yet to respond. Their silence weighed heavily on everyone's mind. If House Tyrell joined with Robert, it would tip the balance dramatically. Their banners would bring fresh levies, their gold would support the king's cause, and their influence would encourage other houses to back the rightful monarch who had rooted out treachery within his own halls. Robert drummed his fingers on the wooden table, the tension a tight coil in his belly. "We must have patience," said Ned quietly, reading the king's mood. "The Tyrells are too canny to leap into a war without weighing every angle. But they will see sense. They must know that a king who punishes incest and dishonor will be a safer ally than one who tolerates it." Robert nodded, pressing his lips into a thin line. Patience had never been his strength, but he understood the need. He looked around at the council members. Lords and councillors who had stood uncertain before now straightened in their chairs. There was a resolve here, a shared understanding that the king had reclaimed his dignity and authority. They waited for word from the south, from those fertile fields and rose banners that could make all the difference. A courier had been sent to Highgarden the moment the truth was certain. The messenger bore carefully chosen words, couched in appeals to justice and stability. He carried a note that made clear the king's actions had exposed a deep treachery and that, while harsh, they were just. Such a message would resonate with Mace Tyrell, eager to tie his house's prosperity to a strong and righteous crown. The silence stretched as the assembled men considered the absence of that raven's return. Robert's gaze flicked from one face to another. Varys was quiet, fingers steepled, eyes half-lidded as if pondering subtle maneuvers. Littlefinger was missing, detained or questioned. No one was quite sure, but better absent than spinning webs of his own. Grand Maester Pycelle, uncomfortable under the intense scrutiny of recent days, fidgeted with his chain. None doubted that Pycelle had known something, or at least suspected, and now he stammered careful words, hoping to maintain favor. "The Tyrells will be swayed by the stability your grace offers," he said softly. "With the north behind you and your brother's armies at hand, few can challenge your claim." A snort of satisfaction from Robert's throat. The north was ready. Even now, rumors that more Stark men would journey south reached his ears. They had far to travel, but the promise of their alliance helped calm him. The Eyrie might keep aloof behind its high walls, but without the Tyrells, Robert still had a formidable hand to play. With them, the war would be as good as won before the first charge sounded. Ned's eyes met Robert's. No words needed to be exchanged. This was the calm before the storm. The small council was aligned, the city guarded, Stannis and Renly present with their swords at the ready, and the king prepared for whatever verdict the Reach might deliver. If the Tyrells joined them, they would move swiftly, sending a formal declaration throughout the realm. The truth of Cersei's crimes would be announced, and any who contested it would face a united front. But if the Tyrells hesitated or sided with the Lannisters, the king's grip tightened on the table's edge at the thought. That would mean a bloody campaign, a return to the fields and rivers where once he had broken a dynasty of dragons. He would do it again if he must. The Iron Throne would not be mocked. Even as the council debated minor details, reinforcing certain garrisons near Rosby and Duskendale, or ensuring that supply lines to Storm's End remained secure, everyone was thinking the same thing. Would the Tyrells come? One raven could seal the fate of the Seven Kingdoms, could determine whether this new unrest would end quickly or fracture into endless strife. For now, Robert and his allies waited, weapons ready, hearts steeled, willing to buy the future with blood if it came to that. But first, they would offer the olive branch, and hope that reason and honor guided House Tyrell's hand. The tension in the small council chamber grew with every passing moment. With Stannis and Renly's combined might already at the city's doorstep, Robert was ready to press forward. Yet they all knew the next challenge lay to the west, where Tywin Lannister's armies would surely stir once news of Cersei's death and the truth of her children's parentage reached his ears. The old lion would not remain idle. He would gather steel and gold and march east to avenge his family's honor. The king would meet him force for force. Robert stood before the council table, hands gripping the back of a heavy chair until the wood creaked. "Send the ravens," he commanded, voice filling the chamber with grim resolve. "Summon the lords of the Stormlands who have not yet mustered. The Northmen who gather near Moat Cailin must be ordered south. Tell the Riverlands to prepare their levies." His gaze flicked to Ned Stark, who nodded, understanding that the call for men and steel would not be subtle this time. There would be no more secret gatherings. Now was the hour to show the realm the king's strength openly. The lords and counselors around the table stirred, exchanging tense looks. They knew that calling all banners meant preparing for war that could embroil the entire kingdom. But Robert had come too far to falter. He had cast out the rot within his own household and would not let Tywin Lannister challenge his rightful authority. This time, the king intended to face the threat head-on, no matter how many swords Tywin forged into a host. There would be no pretense of peace. Ned Stark spoke quietly. "Your Grace, we must ensure that these ravens carry your exact words. Let the lords understand they come not to assault King's Landing, but to defend it, to stand behind the crown's just cause." Ned's voice was calm, but Robert knew that the Master of Ravens would be busy that evening. Messages would fly to every corner of the realm, urging lords old and young to march. The Reach was already courted, the Stormlands had never truly faltered in their loyalty, and the North would follow Ned. Robert believed the realm's memory of the rebellion would remain strong enough to unite them once more in the face of Lannister aggression. "No half measures," the king rumbled. "We face a lord known for his ruthlessness. Let him know we will not bend. The armies will converge near the Trident, if need be, and dare him to break himself upon our steel." He looked to the others at the table, Barristan Selmy with his quiet knightly honor, Varys with his unreadable gaze, and the others who had thrown in their lot with the king's cause. Each man recognized that this was a test of will. If the realm saw the king resolved and well-supported, many would think twice before siding with the Lannisters. The wind rattled the shutters. It was an eerie counterpoint to the silence that followed Robert's command. The council knew that the dispatching of these ravens would unleash a great movement of men and arms. It could shape the fate of the Seven Kingdoms for a generation. But Robert did not flinch, nor shrink from the consequences. He would have order, and he would have justice, even if he needed an army at his back to enforce it. The king watched as Ned moved to carry out his orders, and others rose to attend their duties. Before the night's end, ravens would be winging across the moonlit sky, calling banners from distant keeps and fortresses, summoning allies and forging the lines that would stand against Tywin Lannister's inevitable counterstroke. In these few decisive moments, the course was set. Robert would not yield an inch of ground. He had allies in abundance now. His brothers, Ned Stark, the armies swelling around the capital. Soon, the distant march of boots and the thunder of hooves would signal that the Seven Kingdoms had rallied behind their king. If Tywin dared meet them on the field, Robert vowed to smash him as surely as he had smashed the Targaryens. He had claimed the crown through blood and iron. He would keep it the same way if he must.